and welcome back to the Art to Life podcast. So today I'm going to talk about something that I kind of can't believe I haven't talked about. Something I deal with all the time, and I love them and I hate them. And I'm talking about mistakes. Early on, I just avoided them as much as possible, and they really were a stumbling block for me, really got in the way, trying to avoid them. And now I use them, and now they're actually the most interesting part of my work. So I thought today we'd dive into this a little bit. Maybe some of this you've heard before. Maybe you'll take something away that will basically free you up in the face of mistakes, and rather the fear of making mistakes. Here's the problem. The problem is that we're hardwired to avoid mistakes. We live in a world that there's consequences. There's consequences to making a mistake if you drive on the wrong side of the road. There's consequences to, leaving, your car open and not locking it. And we don't like uncertainty. We don't like surprises. We avoid them. It's a survival thing that's built in. And, we're taught to color on the inside of the lines, and we were brought up that way for the most part, And the funny thing is with this is that we use rules. Like, rules can kind of keep us safe. And it's really true. It's like curfew. I used to hate it. I had this curfew, and it was imposed on me. I had to be home at 10 when I was a kid, and I'd be out skateboarding. And that was this rule. But it kind of kept me safe because not a lot of great things happen after 10 at night for a 13-year-old. And so we embrace these mistakes. We embrace these rules. Rules of the road, rules of writing, rules of art making, rules of, they're just rules all over the place. And in a certain way, they're designed to help us avoid these mistakes. But the problem is when we try new things, when we're changing, when we're growing, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be you decide to take a sailboat. I'm looking out right now at a sailboat on the water. And if I was to get on that sailboat and pull that anchor up and sail into the middle of the lake, I would make a lot of mistakes because I haven't done it. It's new for me. But as sort of one of the primary things I teach, which is the things that are new, the things that are different are what bring us alive. And so there's this bind where, yes, we want to experience new things, but we also don't want to make mistakes. And they come fast and furious when you're going to anything new. And this for sure comes with art making when you're trying to change. For so many folks, me included, I've gone through different patches where I've stayed way too long in a certain kind of work because it felt safe. It just felt good to rest there, like I got something, I'm going to just stay here for a while and make this work. Everyone likes it. I can sell this, and I'm just going to have a life, And of course, in time, that gets boring because it's the same. And then you have to change and move on. But it's the mistakes often, the career mistakes. Something like, what if I made something? What if I abandoned what I was doing and I come out with this new direction and nobody likes it? And then somehow I'm supposed to go back. Or what if I have a show of work? I spent a whole 6 months making a body of work. And this is a real thing. I mean, for me, I really try not to think about it because I want the work in the show to be different. I want it to be very different. And if it's different, I don't know it as well. And I'm spending all this time doing it. And then there's this big buildup. And then you have this show, and God, it's satisfying when, people like it, right? I mean, we all want to make something, and hopefully the work can sell, and so it's tricky. It's tricky that the mistakes come along, they ride gunshot with making with change. So so that's the hard part. That's the problem. But there's solutions. But before I kind of dive into that, I want to talk about the different kinds of mistakes, or just the elusive nature of it. So a lot of mistakes happen in the beginning stages, or it feels like mistakes. There's a lot of fear when you're doing a new thing, especially around art. People are paralyzed by, they're not sure what to do. They haven't done it before much, and it's really important. And I see this in workshops for people who are, well, anybody really. You come to a workshop and you want to make something that you like. Just give me one thing that I can take home that I like. You don't want to spend your whole time making things you don't like, right? But the kind of mistake I'm thinking about has to do with a mistake about what our expectations are. I call it the gap, the distance between what we think we want to make, what we expect to make, and what we actually can. And it's not really, I mean, it's a mistake of perception. We always think, at least this is the case for me, and I'm curious if this is for others, that I always think it's going to be better. I always think I'm never the other way. I always think that what I'm going to do next is going to be so good. And it kind of most of the time falls short. But because I'm finishing the thing, then I'm getting excited about, oh, okay, well, the next one, and I've been doing this my whole life. It's kind of crazy. So there's this mistake of expectations. And that just can be helped by reframing it that it's just built into growth. When we're trying to learn something and improve, this is um, this is just part of the process. Um, and then there's just mistakes with the materials. Like I was just saying. I mean, I remember that when I started using oil paint and all the challenges I had around um, that material. It was crazy making. And sometimes the paint wouldn't adhere right. Sometimes it was too thick. Sometimes it wouldn't dry. And then I would try and change it and it would muddy. And it was just built into the material. And I would just get these mistakes. Or I've lately been having a real problem with paint chipping, actually full blown paint peeling off, and I haven't figured it out yet. And it's driving me crazy. It's driving the gallery crazy where I send these paintings and I think I'm doing the same thing I always have. And then they kind of delaminate. They're on canvas. And I don't know if it's because they're going to a drier climate or whatever. But that's technical. And those are not as scary because they just happen. They're not really, I don't know. I mean, they're unfortunate, but that is going to happen as you change and as you grow. And then there's the cool mistakes, that these mistakes that you realize you made. You look back and you realize you made a mistake. These are the things. These are the ones that I get a lot. I can look back just in a week or two, a couple weeks, and I can tell um, that I made a mistake, but I couldn't tell when I made it. But it takes just a couple weeks, and then I know that I made a mistake. So that's really crazy, and I think it's because we're changing and we're getting better, maybe, or you gain objectivity, you haven't looked at it, and then you can just see it. It's like, oh my God, why? That was so obvious. Why did I, it's kind of maddening, you know? Um, then there's the ones that we imagine we're going to make. These are made up mistakes. These are sort of, they hinder us because we don't want to do something because we imagine that something's going to happen, a mistake's going to be made. You're going to lose control. It's not going to work, or someone's told you something, and this really hinders us because you don't actually know if it's going to be a mistake or not until you do it. So my advice around this is you just have to actually have the full-blown mistake. Don't get in that trap of narrowing what you can do and can't do. Because of the fear of the mistake, right? And then there's the mistakes that are the accidental, the unplanned ones, which I'll dive into in a minute because those can be so cool. They come with the territory. They come with new territory. They're just part of it. And you must have mistakes. At least this is how I frame it for myself. You must have mistakes in your art to make powerful, authentic work. It's essential. So, but they come from being in new territory. Now, the big thing with mistakes is the fear around them. It's not really the mistake that's the big problem. It's the fear. It's the fear of making them that really is what I'm talking about today, because I want to relieve this. This is something, even if you can get 10% of it less, it's going to make the art stronger. It's going to make your work more personal. Fear, white knuckling it, you know, it hinders our ability to be free. And when we don't feel free, when we don't feel safe, and we just don't feel ourselves, then the work feels like that. And when the work feels like that, it doesn't connect. It doesn't connect to you first and foremost. It doesn't feel like the best version of you, and it and it doesn't connect to other people. I mean, to really get great work. I mean, you can see this. Sometimes if you've ever done life drawing classes where you do those 1 minute sketches, and a lot of them are just like crazy and loose, but sometimes those can be so amazing because you're just so free. They always are, like, they have a power about it, you know? So it can cramp us. That fear literally tightens us up, makes the work feel smaller, and people can pick it up. You know, you don't have to. I can look at a student's work and I can feel even the area where they were working sometimes where I feel they were tight. You know, it's just it's not fun. It's not free. I don't know if you can relate to this. I remember early on, I had a gallery that I really, it was like a dream to get into this gallery in Santa Fe. I submitted my work and they ended up seeing it. And I couldn't believe it that they took my work. And there was one painting they just absolutely loved. And they said, "We love this one, like, send us two more." And they needed them pretty quickly. And I didn't have two more of them. And, you know, I did the classic mistake of, you know, I had made 30 paintings. I got lucky on two of them, and those were the strongest ones. And those were what I showed to the gallery. So they thought that that's what my work was like. And it kind of was like that, but it was a fluke. I mean, it was really good, but I didn't totally know how to do it again. So I go home, and this is a 4-foot painting, and I had left the really good painting, unfortunately, with the gallery, and so I had to go from a photograph, and I had to do another one like it. And this thing, My God, it was the worst. It was so hard to do this. I tried to do it like it. I tried everything to make it feel as good as that one flute that I had made. And I think I even had a problem with I put this I wanted to do this really beautiful surface on it, and it was acrylic, but I used some really weird uh, to try the. I just wanted this thing to be so good. This was such an amazing gallery. It would like change my whole life, you know. And I wanted it to have this really rich surface. And I spent all this money on glazes and these varnishes. And I tried to do this thing, and then it got this weird humidity, kind of white areas in the painting. And I remember I called Golden Color, and I was so upset because I had like 4 days left, and I had to ship this thing to Santa Fe, and it was like having this bloom in it. You know, it was getting all this white kind of like frost inside the thing, and it's like it's a drawing. And I'll never forget it. It's sort of a credit to Golden, but I called up Golden because I don't know if you guys know this, but Golden's pretty amazing when it comes to support for materials. They're next level. And I talked to, I think it's like Eric Golden. I talked to the guy who owns the company about these products I was using, you know, and I couldn't believe it. And I forget what happened. I think I had to like, I don't know. I can't even remember what happened, but you know, the day came and I got this thing together. But it was, you know, I got the surface good and I shipped it and they pulled it out and I didn't hear from them. And, you know, and then they didn't call me for the next week. And I just knew it, you know, and they were like, then, and I don't think they called me, and then I received both paintings back with a note saying, you know, thanks, but this is turns out it's not going to work out. And I put these two paintings together, you know, and I looked at it. And it's like one was done just there was no pressure, and I just made it, and I don't even know how I made it. And then the one that I tried to do with it, it was so stiff, and it was a floral painting. You know, it's this big floral painting. And, oh God. Um, so that really taught me a thing about you. It can really take you out. Trust me, the fear of creating something that is a mistake, that's not as good, all that, just man, it's you got to unpack that, you know. Um, so it just puts boundaries around us, you know. Just fear just boundaries us, and we want to feel safe. And there's even rules. Uh, and I teach a lot, so I hear these rules that students say uh, to keep them like, you know, like just give me some parameters, please. It can't possibly be unlimited possibilities. That's terrifying. You know, give me some rules. And I always hear, you know, there's the thing of the golden rectangle. There's uh, what's that? Blue and green should never be seen without a color in between. There's a couple of them with black. There's people that say that you got to mix your own black and you can't use you can't use the store black. There's a whole, I gotta make it, that'd be kind of hilarious to like find all those rules that are nonsense in art. I mean, you guys know this, right? That's the whole point of art is like, there are no rules. That's what we're doing. We're breaking rules. Art is the place you get to learn how not to follow rules. And it's all about exceptions, right? Um, so, so leveraging mistakes, because this is the good stuff here. And I think art is the place, uh, art is the area, if we can hold some of this in our life, it's the area where we learn to take mistakes and see what can happen by leaning into something we haven't done before. You know, we can be encouraged to learn and learn ways that we can be happy and make learning sustainable, you know. Um, I love I love the term happy accidents, and this is sort of how I see them. You know, there's all these things that happen along the way. Uh, if you're willing to pay attention and not freak out if something goes wrong, you know, and I'm thinking of Picasso, right? Who um, every act of creation is first an act of destruction. That guy thought that's what he was doing. He was just full on experimenting all the time, you know, and he created cubism. It's like there's such a benefit to things that can happen. And if you're able to see it and not be scared and look at it and ask yourself, what does this mistake make possible? Jackson Pollock, those poor paintings, that happened because he was painting on the wall and drips dropped on the floor. That's what that's what created that movement in art. I mean, it's incredible. It was an accident. Understanding this, that we get a possibility when a mistake occurs, and mistakes and imperfection is what we are. I mean, we aren't perfect. That's not what we are. We're just making mistakes all the time. I love that phrase, failing forward. We're just kind of making mistakes and learning and making mistakes and learning, making mistakes and moving forward, making mistakes and learning and going forward, And that's how I see art making. And it's just so cool because mistakes are such an important part of art making. You it in and if you're willing to allow them, or at least think of them in this way, um, that there's this connection that we have with others that make mistakes. Um, when I see work that I can look at it, I can see it in my own, but I can see it in other people's work where there's a risk involved, where someone's trying something and they're not sure. And that's edgy. There's this kind of scary thing that's going on here where they're willing to risk something, and that just makes the most exciting work. It's and when it turns out, it's great. I mean, lots of times it falls short, right? But it's so amazing when it works, and you get this monstrous learning as a result of it. Um, if we could be perfect, it would be boring. It really would. And I alluded to that earlier, when I've had patches in my career where I was making a certain kind of work and I wired it, and it was not perfect, but for me, it was pretty perfect because it didn't take a lot of time and I didn't have to worry about it. And it was pleasing and people liked it, and it was reliable, and, and people purchased it. Um, but I say this a lot in workshops, that no one's really interested in perfect swan dives off the low board. It just isn't it. I think it was a Greg Louganis in the Olympics where he was, as he was, I don't know, this was most 20 years ago. I remember watching the Summer Olympics and the diving, and oh my God. And you see this every year in the Olympics where somebody has spent their whole life perfecting something. They're like such a master, and they're diving off those high boards and just don't quite do it, and they don't quite do it, and they have one more try, and they just nail it, and it's just perfect, and it's the best entertainment, and it's the most inspiring thing to see because everything's on the line, and it and but it's the imperfection of the other ones that make the one that's so good, so perfect, just stand out and be so satisfying. And it's like it's unforgettable. I mean, I remember that dive so many years later. And it's the same thing with work. Mistakes are how we learn. It's so cool. And I think of it this way, that, and I don't even know we should call them mistakes, but we do. And when you make a mistake, because usually you're trying something new. You're pushing yourself into a new area. When you do, and you make a mistake, what you gain from that is that you know now that that avenue that you were checking out, you were trying, is no longer isn't right. You don't have to go down there anymore. It's like, oh, cross that road off, you're done there. And you gain, it changes everything else because now you know that that thing that you were thinking about doing actually isn't the way to go. You know that. And it increases the possibility for the other avenues. So that's if a mistake is a mistake. And then if you try something and the mistake is not a mistake, and then you learn something too. You've taken this risk, and oh my God, it totally helped. Those are the only two scenarios that we have for mistakes in art, right? There's no consequence. There's no, maybe we waste a little paint, having to repaint something over or whatever. But that too, when we cover up something, and my work is just mistake on top of mistake on top of mistake. I actually love it so much now. I'm just painting mistakes, and it's the combination of mistakes that reveal something to me that allow me to then go into an area that I see something that's really working, but it's created from mistakes, quite literally. But a mistake when we drive down the wrong side of the road, that's a serious thing, right? We don't want to make that mistake, So it's this cool thing in art, and I'm sure there's other areas. I mean, probably not architecture, or probably not, scuba diving, but in expression and dance, and I think, in creative expression, I think it's those moments right on the edge where you're not really sure that you're trying something, that it really brings a sense of vulnerability out into the world. It shows you more than almost anything else. If you have a close friend and you uh, you share actually what's happening in your life that's hard. I mean, whenever I hear a friend, when I'm been shared with like that, I feel so connected to the other person. It's like an honor to have somebody feel comfortable enough with you to tell you what they're experiencing and what's hard in their life. And we don't, as the person who feels they've lost their way, we don't want to, it's hard to share that sometimes, but for the person who's receiving it, it is so impacting. It really shows who this friend is. It's powerful. And the same thing goes along with art making. There's a vulnerability that is just comes into the work. And it's so good. And it's such a beautiful offset to areas where you do know what you're doing, when you're super confident. You see, we're all things. We're human beings that are confident. We're human beings that we're vulnerable. We're a human being that likes something one day and doesn't like it the other, and we're indecisive, and we're all things. And when the art can have a taste of all those things, it gets really good. It gets really authentic. So they connect us. They connect us to each other. They connect us to ourselves. They remind us of our humanity, and it's powerful. I think of this as with mistakes, that on my work, and literally when it happens and I leave it, especially in an area, in a painting, it's the one part of the painting that I never grow tired of. It's so interesting because it's more open. There's more possibility. It's a mistake. It's like, what happened there? And it's fresh and it's different. And then sometimes later, well, many times I leave them because they're just so revealing and they're so great. they become like the way I was working um, in, was very mannered or controlled. And then there's this mistake that's left. And I think there's a wisdom to being able to just like let something be and show yourself more. Let that show. I mean, sometimes you see this with, it's not a mistake, but seeing the raw canvas, you have a full blown finished painting and it's done on a piece of linen, but some of the linen is left. It's beautiful. It's like this unfinished aspect next to this really finished quality. And some could call it like a mistake if it's not all the canvas is not all covered. And it's like, well, that's ridiculous. Why does that have to be like this? Right. Um, you know, so the idea is your appetite for mistakes, if you can start seeing them in a more positive light about they're the harbingers of what's coming, what might be possible. This could turn into a whole new thing for you. Um, that and it's like you want them to be in part of your work. I had I've had this problem I was telling you before with some of my work where the paint doesn't stay on the canvas. And this was more when I was painting on panels, and it was oil paint, and I used wax in it, and these paintings, and I use a lot of sanding and scraping in my work, and I love that, and I'm layering up things, and I scrape and I chisel off the paint, and I would send the painting to the gallery, and sometimes in delivery, shipping, where the canvas was hit on the truck, he used to send these paintings in these trucks that would cruise all around the country, and they were just open. You didn't have to package them up. You just stand them like, in a carpeted truck. But invariably, things would get hit and things would be slid out, and some of the paint would chip off on the bottom. And it was kind of noticeable. It was like a big chip. And there's always paint underneath because my paint has a lot of layers. And I remember the gallery sent it back to me, and this happened a couple times. And then, like the third time it came back, I was looking at it and I was like, I actually like this. I like this chip down here. I know that I didn't do it, but this pink coming through here, it looks really good. And then I realized, what am I doing? If I say I like chipped paint and it's part of the work, that's it. I get to decide right here, right now, this is the art. It's chipped. I like chip paint. It's part of the art. And I think it's really cool, actually, that I didn't chip it and that somebody else did. And it adds to the story. And as soon as I started embracing that story, then the gallery could say that, and people completely were fine with it, as they should be. But it was more me and my relationship to this mistake. I mean, I was patching it all and I spending all this money shipping it back and forth, and it's like, no, actually my paint, it kind of chips if you're not careful, and so that was a really huge, huge learning for me. Anyway, so I hope that this something in here has kind of, made you like loosen the grip on the steering wheel a little bit. When you realize that you can't make a true mistake, that all of them are needed, it's so liberating. Like, wait a second, I can do anything, and even if it's wrong, I can make it into something right. And that is freeing and liberating. And when you get that, and you just even a little bit, the marks become easier. It's less stressful. It's easier to go into the studio. It's way more fun, right? And you'll show up more, right? So it increases your momentum. And work that is free, work that feels like you when you're in your best version of yourself, and you're not worrying about what other people think about your work, you're not worrying about making a mistake, or something's not right, or it has to be right or wrong, all that. That can stay in the world of out there. This is your art practice where you're practicing becoming yourself, and all parts of you are welcome. And not only are they welcome, they're necessary if you're going to pull this off and make amazing, authentic, powerful art. So, all right. So listen, you guys, I so appreciate you being here. On September 20th, save this date, we'll be releasing the 100th podcast, the 100th episode of the Art to Life podcast. We have some really special things. It's going to be a long episode. It's going to be really cool. I'm not going to tell you a lot about it. The theme, though, is about emerging, and it's all about what this thing is doing, what it's become. I can't wait to share it with you, but I cannot believe that I've done 100 of anything in a row. And I'm just praying that I make it to 100, because I think this is the 95th episode, and I sure don't want to blow it and miss it. I mean, I've gotten real close where I'm flying back on a plane and I don't, my recorder breaks or my video. I mean, it's been pretty crazy, but I don't know. I'm pretty proud of the fact that you guys have helped create this and you've supported me doing this. And it's been such a learning thing for me. And I'm just so grateful for all of you guys who have shared this, especially, and more people are coming, and more people are commenting. So we're going to be looking back on some of the key lessons, the first 100 episodes, and looking forward to what's coming. And so in preparation for this episode, we're going to do a cool thing. If any of you guys want to leave a comment, if you go to arttolife.com under podcasts, there's a little yellow bar on the far right side that says leave a question or a comment for Nick. You can click on that and you can record a thing. And tell me about an episode or a part of something that really moved you, that really helped you, that really inspired you. I do hear from you guys about certain things, but I don't know if it was, whatever, because I'm going to choose a bunch of things based on what I'm going to let people choose what they thought was valuable. And then I'm going to dive into it again and go a little deeper. So if you can do that, you have until September 1st to do that. And if you're selected, all the folks that leave a comment, we're going to choose one person, and we've got a pretty killer prize, 100th anniversary prize, that if you leave a comment and it's chosen random out of a hat, we're going to send this to you. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. So anyway, I think we're on the 95th episode, but just thanking you in advance for the momentum and that you give me from the feedback, and just all the ideas, and oh my God, and so many people I've talked to and all the interviews. It's really taught me a ton, and I hope that you've learned some things along the way too. So thanks, you guys. And listen, if you love this episode, please leave a rating. That would be so great. We read all of them, and it helps with the logarithms. It's crazy. But also, if you could share this with a friend, that would be really, really super. You guys, I will see you real soon on the next Art to Life podcast. Really, thanks so much for being here. Okay, bye.